Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today. Now we're going to go back to ancient Turkey. I talked about a couple sites related to Gobekli Tepe last week. Hamzan Tepe here, Harbetsuvan Tepe right here. Here is Gobekli Tepe. I'm going to be making a video about Gobekli Tepe probably next week. That will be going over a lot of things, but the only way that you can tell what a place is all about is to look at the other sites around the area that come from the same time period and form an overall picture. Today we're going to go about 120 miles to the northeast, and this is called Körtik Tepe. One of those two probably is the correct pronunciation. But you can see this is right on the edge of two different geological regions here. Let's go down and see what this place looks like. But here is the site, occupied 12,500 years ago to 11,700 years ago, almost directly in the window of the Younger Dryas period. But the earliest phase of the occupation here goes back to a time period that is older than Gobekli Tepe. And this is a lot different than Gobekli Tepe. Gobekli Tepe seemed to be a place of worship and pilgrimage for these early, they call them hunter-gatherers, but when you're living in communities, can you really be called that? There were homes, ritualistic burials. This is another place that kind of sets history, at least what we have been told, on its end, and totally debunks what we think we know. Now here is an overhead shot where they've excavated down into ancient dwellings, people's homes. They have found burials down here, thousands of artifacts that go back over 12,000 years. But just to read a little, it says, to date, findings have been reached that show the accepted materialist approach in these four sides of the world is not correct. The most important of these is the historical finds in Gobekli Tepe, 20 kilometers northeast of Sanliurfa. Gobekli Tepe has stone structures dating back 12,000 years. T-shaped columns with various animal figures 8 meters tall indicate that people of that period built this place as a worshipping area. Although it covers a large area, there is no evidence that people lived in Gobekli Tepe, so Gobekli Tepe is not a residential area. It is a place where people come to worship from far away to perform religious rituals. And, yeah, I agree with that. It says the situation is the exact opposite of what the materialist conception of history claims. Materialists claim that the so-called resident life began 8,000 to 5,500 years ago. However, archaeological findings today go back 12,000 years ago, and even today's technology, which is very difficult to make art structures and materialist statements, are completely destroyed. And this is a translated website, so the wording is a little off here. But certainly the findings at Gobekli Tepe pushed human history way back, and certainly made us rethink what we thought about the organizations of early human cultures. It says 12,000 years ago, the inhabitants of Gobekli Tepe carved the stone blocks they brought from 2 kilometers away and built T-shaped columns weighing 40 to 60 tons. Moreover, an architectural style was created at Gobekli Tepe, and complex structures were built with walls surrounding T-columns. It is clear that all this would not have been done by primitive humans. But here it says the second impact on evolution, Körtik Tepe. While the reverberation of Gobekli Tepe finds still continues, a new discovery on the Anatolian soil was even more powerful blow for evolutionists. Körtik Tepe is located at the point where the Batman River and the Tigris River meet near Pinasarbi. It says, here, historical excavations dating back 12,500 years have been found in the excavations, which went down 5 meters below the ground. So Körtik Tepe is older than Gobekli Tepe. The biggest difference of this place from Gobekli Tepe is that it is full of settlement area, while Gobekli Tepe is a place of worship. Important architectural structures were also uncovered during the excavations. There is a lot of archaeological evidence that the place of residence is a complete living space. Excavations and researchers did not reveal any evidence that people living in Körtik Tepe were engaged in agriculture. In other words, Körtik Tepe belongs to a hunter-gatherer, but a resident living society. Here is a look at some of the artifacts laid out here. And they said they weren't into agriculture, they were just hunter-gatherers living in a civilized space. Well, It seems they did eat plants, obviously, but they weren't into agriculture just as intensively as they were later on down the line. And I'm having a little bit of a problem with the term hunter-gatherers. Seems they were very settled and civilized. But I just thought this was super interesting. I've been listening to people talk about Gobekli Tepe for about 7 or 8 years now. They always say, where did these people come from? Well, it's obvious there was settlements just like this where people came from. We can't take our history and try to make a total picture when we're only looking at the places that tour groups or tourists can get to. We have to look at everywhere and look at all the research that has been done. This place has been researched for 17 years. I don't think there's an English-speaking video on YouTube about this place. Well, that changes today. It says cultural properties on the 12,500 years on Körtik Hill. Körtik Tepe, which was found to be older than Gobekli Tepe Mound, it contains many findings about settled life and social life here. Körtik Tepe demonstrates the existence of cultural and commercial relations in the early Neolithic period and has very advanced artistic features. There is a self-designed architectural structure in the settlement at Körtik Tepe. These buildings have round bottom and stone walls. These buildings used as dwellings were also used as graves. And here is a look at some of these dwellings that date back older than Gobekli Tepe. Some burials were found here. They have been excavating here for about 17 years, and I think this was called into action back in the day because there was going to be a dam built on the Tigris here, but here you can see how far they've excavated down and the dwellings they have found down here. Here is one of the burials they found here, and there was stone implements found with the burials. It says, various unused stone vessels and axes were buried with the dead. Other stone tools, web and weaving weights, beads and jewelry, objects of various stones, animal shells, and hard stalks of bird feathers, flint, and obsidian tools were also used as dead gifts. All this shows that the people of Körtik Tepe believed in the afterlife and shared a common belief and culture. In addition, the fact that the gifts of the dead carry differences are interpreted as having different social status among the living people at Körtik Tepe. It says stone pots, buttons, fishing rods, axes, sewing needles, jewelry, mortar and pestle hands, various carving, cutting, and drilling tools were also found at Körtik Tepe. These tools are usually made of bone, obsidian, and flint. The fact that obsidian, which is known to be absent in the region, was used and was probably obtained from the vicinity of Bengal. That is, the Körtik Tepe people developed relations with their environment, therefore it indicates the existence of deportation trade. Such a relationship points to the existence of societies with cultural interactions, outward and complex social structures. This is an anthropological discovery that demonstrates the exact opposite of evolutionist claims. Here are the top of some axes. You notice they have designs in them. And some of these designs are similar to what you see on the pillars at Gobekli Tepe, and I'll be going into a video where I talk about those designs and what they represent. Here is an animal carving on one of these, and this is pretty well made, and it appears to be protruding from the stone, not carved into the stone. Bas relief, is that what that is called? But there is some argument what this represents. Some say a mountain goat, maybe. And here is some pottery found at the site, and there's a lot of designs on these. Also found here a lot of scorpion and serpent imagery, something I'm going to be going into, what that actually represents. But here it talks about these polished objects. It says, other polished objects were buried as gifts to the dead. While most of the axes found normally show wear and marks due to their use, they are not present in those left to the dead. It is understood that these axes were never used and that they were specially made for the dead. Here are ornamental beads made out of different objects that were found at the site, put on some pottery found at the site. Here it shows some small sewing needles and some other things here down at the bottom. But it says, during the excavations at Körtik Tepe, a community that was developed to the astonishment of the scientific world in Anatolia was encountered. It is a community that does not have any settlement and housing problems for people who live there, has developed beliefs and social status, and produces works with artistic concern. Now here is a look at the site, and the picture is becoming a little more clear. This place was first occupied about 12,500 years ago, after whatever led to the Younger Dryas, whatever happened, the comet impact or whatever. Maybe they went to the Gobekli Tepe region because Earth was a little more hospitable to living things at this time period. Gobekli Tepe is erected. What does it say there about that place on those pillars? Well, that is all up for speculation and good research. Here's another artifact from Körtik Tepe. And what this represents, well, anybody's guess. They can leave it in the comments section. Here is some more jewelry, a needle, and some bowls here that were found. More artifacts with little carvings on them. Here is a pillar from Gobekli Tepe, and here is some of the pottery from Körtik Tepe. Seems the imagery is pretty much the same. We've always been asking, who built Gobekli Tepe? Where did these people come from? Well, this appears to be an answer. Seems like Gobekli Tepe was a central pilgrimage area for settlements all around this region. I'm going to be talking a lot more about them. But here is some more imagery from some pottery. Is this a serpent here? What does this represent? This whole scene? Might be getting into that. Some ancient texts that we are all familiar with, but I think I'll wrap it up. That is Körtik Tepe. They've been doing a lot of excavation here back to around the early 2000s. A dam is going to be built here, I guess. It's going to put this place underwater. I guess that's what I read. But I hope you thought that was interesting. The story of this region gets more fascinating and more complex the more we dig. Pardon the pun. Hope you thought that was interesting. And you all have a very nice day.